as we get started this morning, I'm going to invite our guest speaker up, Mr. Tucker Friberg. Thank you guys for welcoming me. I met with Tucker a little bit earlier this week to kind of catch up on life, and I wanted to kind of give you a moment to, we all like to talk about ourselves. If we really admit it, we do. We like to talk about ourselves. And today, I'm just going to do an interview with Tucker and get him to share his story a bit about where God's guided him and where he came from and all that. So where were you born and raised?
Yeah. So I was born in central Southern California, Bakersfield, and I lived there until I was about 5 or 6, and then I was raised in a really small town in Northern California. It's called Oroville, about an hour and a half north of Sacramento, and so kind of like a nobody kind of town a little bit, and so just like no one knows what it is.
How big is Oroville?
Well, for California, it's small. It's not small for Idaho. It was like 10,000 people most of my life, but we the next town was another 20, 30 miles to the north and south. So like we didn't have a Costco, we didn't have a Starbucks, like we didn't have any of that growing up.
I know. First world problems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, it's tough, man.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah.
The Friberg name is known around here. You probably had some people that said, "Hey, do you know? Are you related to?"
Yeah. I got a lot of extended family here in the area, and so most people see my last name like, "Oh, wait, I know Friberg," and so. I have a couple great uncles that live here. I'm actually renting from one of them right now, but my great uncle Merv, he goes over to First. My great uncle Hugh Friberg, he was a missionary in Mozambique, and he was in prison for 9 months for his faith in the 80s. And so a lot of people know him. We're the only branch that, for some reason, made it to California. So. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome.
So most of I got a lot of extended family here.
So there's a fun fact that I found out about you. I want you to share this fun fact. What is that fun fact that somebody here would just get a good chuckle or just going to be impressed by?
That's right. Yeah. So there's like a fun fact, like interview thing I had to do for NU. And so one fun fact about me, I caught a duck with my bare hands when I was in high school. That's a fun fact about me that we were talking about.
Yes. And did it put up a fight? How did you do it?
And it wasn't like a duck that's like in your, that you like raise. It was just like a random duck. I was out in the woods and I lured it in with some grapes and just went, and I grabbed it.
This sounds like a Looney Tunes episode. Hey. I mean, I
don't know.
Elmer Fudd and
you just got to call me, what's the Roadrunner? Fast.
You're fast.
Beep, beep.
You are fast. That's amazing.
Right.
And so tell us a little about your experience at Northwest Nazarene University.
Yeah.
And kind of, what was your claim
to
fame?
So,
how'd you get there? How did you find?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a COVID graduate. And so I graduated high school in 20. And so I really did not get to say goodbye to my friends or my teachers or anything like that. Which is actually, it's kind of a thing for us COVID generation kids and stuff. And so that was pretty influential on kind of where I was wanting to go with my future for college. Like I know I was wanting to get out of my town. I was wanting to kind of explore a little bit. And then when COVID happened and I applied to mostly California schools, they all shut down. And, I couldn't do the online school. And so NNU was the only school not in California that I applied to. And my dad had gone to NNU, a lot of us Fribergs have gone to NNU. And so I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to go to NNU. And so kind of in a weird way, like God used COVID to kind of bring me here, which was weird, but was super, super happy. I've just loved it up here. It's been awesome. I've made some really amazing friendships in college with some really awesome guys that I didn't really have a lot in my hometown. And so I just also love it up here too. Do a lot of fly fishing now too, so.
Yes. You get a lot of amens here.
Yeah.
Mr. Gerald down here, he's like an outfitter. He can take you any place you'd like to go. I'm waiting on my invite still, but I'll get there too. So while you were at NU, you enrolled there, and you have met a special lady.
Yep.
That sometimes happens when you go to college.
It's true.
You get your MR degree or your MRS degree, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So tell us about this lady.
Right there. She's definitely the better half, for sure. So her name is Bailey. We met actually at Eagle Naz, and so that's where I go. I go to Eagle Church of Nazarene, and she was kind of raised there. And my buddies took me to Eagle Naz when I first started college, but we actually didn't start dating. So I met her when she was in high school, and I was a freshman in college. But she was actually dating someone else at the time when we first met, and so we didn't start dating until 3 years later, my junior year. My brother like halfway through my junior year, and we're getting married in May. So pretty close. Yeah. Actually 2 months today.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So are you involved with the planning, or are you kind of just
I'm trying to be involved in the planning as best as I can, but
Good job.
she no, I'm like, hey, if there's food and friends, I'm gonna have a good time.
Hey, and if you're on a budget, just one tip for a wedding.
Yeah.
Make the meal potluck. Your guests bring the food, and somebody finds something they like, right? Nobody can turn down a potluck. Hey, thank you for sharing that part too. I mean, when you got to NNU, did you know right away what you're going to study, or kind of some of your interests, and what led you to your major?
And that kind of it kind of brings me to kind of what I think we're going to talk a lot about today. So I originally was going to come to NNU so I can be a high school math teacher. I was kind of feeling like the Lord was directing me to that, and so I was going to get a degree in math education, secondary, so 7th through 12th. And while I was there, I was like, I'll just add a math bachelor's of science, because it was only a couple more classes, and I was like, I like math, and while I'm here, I might as well just do it. And so
it all added up.
I know, yeah, seriously.
Terrible.
Ended up getting a math degree also. And kind of while I was in college, it's weird because I like math. I'm also like a really people person. Yeah. And so a lot of my fellow students are like math, computer science people, and they're like, right? And they're like not really like people-ing. So I was trying to like figure out how I can do this and stuff. And so as I was for like more and more in my education at NU, I was like, actually, I don't really know if I want to be a teacher and stuff. Yeah. And so I had some crazy like experiences working in the summers, doing some internship stuff. Yeah. And that kind of got me on kind of a more mathy pathway that I'm kind of ended up in now. Yeah. So.
And so in 2022, fast forward a little bit past your graduation, what was an opportunity that came across your path? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I was just talking to some of the guys here at this table who also went to NNC back in the day. People went to NNC over here. Yeah, lots of people did. Okay, great. So I'm sure it was, you guys had this experience when you were there, but because it's nice, like how it's more of a smaller university, you kind of develop that relationship, mentorship with professors that were there. And so I don't know if you had that experience where you were close with a professor or just friends with a professor, but that's not really a thing at public universities now. You don't really at like a big school like Boise State, right? Like your professors are teaching like 300 people, like they don't get to know you, right? Yeah. So in the hallways in the science building, I just got to talking to this professor named Dr. Dale Hamilton, who's now the department chair of the math computer science department over at NNU. He also, like me, is kind of math computer sciencey, but it's really easy to talk to and like to talk to people and stuff. And so we just started talking, and we both had like interest in wildfires and stuff and kind of the outdoors a little bit. And so he told me that I needed to apply to this internship with NASA doing wildfire stuff for them. And I was like, me? I was just like a sophomore in college, and I was a math ed major. And that's why, I was also math too, but I was kind of thinking teaching. Why would a teacher go work for NASA? I just didn't. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I waited like 2 weeks, and then I ran into him again. He's like, hey, did you apply to that internship? And I was like, no, I didn't. He's like, you really need to do it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I was like, I guess I will. Wasn't even on the radar. I was just talking to Mitch about what's it like when something's not on the radar, right? And so it was not even like, I was like, whatever. I wasn't even looking for internships. I just happened to apply for this one, and I got it. And so that kind of sent me on a whole journey. And
real quick on that type of internship, what are the odds of being picked to be in that?
What were the odds for being picked?
Yeah.
Well, I later learned that there were 150, 200 applicants, and they chose 15. I was the only guy from the West Coast. It was out in Virginia.
Yeah.
And so I was the only guy on the West Coast. I was the only math guy. Everyone else was like an aerospace engineer. And I was also one of the youngest people there.
Yes.
And honestly, I genuinely don't know why they chose me. Genuinely. I didn't have anything crazy on my resume. I don't know, besides an okay GPA, I guess.
You had listed though the town that you were in, which is near where some major
wildfires
happened.
Right? So when I was in high school, when I was a junior in high school in 2018, the Camp Fire burnt down our neighboring town of Paradise. So I don't know if you've heard about that, but it was over 300,000 acres. It's the #1 most deadly wildfire in California's history. And so I just played a soccer game there a couple weeks before, and I haven't been since to the town, and it just completely leveled the town. And so that happened a couple times actually, having to evacuate like that. So that's how I got interested in wildfire.
Yes.
And like to be outdoorsy up in the woods and stuff. And so anyway, I'm here on East Coast, and I'm like people out there don't really get what it's like to live on the West Coast. And, it's like a wildfire in, Tennessee, North Carolina is not the same as the ones that we get out here in Idaho.
How so?
Environmental factors that, there's a lot of humidity and stuff. It's just way drier here. And so, and then the terrain is not even close.
And the weather patterns are different, right? And that's what NASA was trying to study with this idea of using drones. So tell us a little bit about the drones, and I'll put some pictures on the screen.
Totally,
a few videos about.
Yep, absolutely. So what we did is our task was, hey, we need you 15 kids to do something to help firefighters. And I was like, okay. And so I had some friends in Cal Fire, who were friends with my dad, went to church with us. And I was like, hey, how can we help you? We only got 10 weeks. And so I know we probably can't do a lot, but just what do you guys need? And actually for firefighters, I don't know if there are any firefighters or wildland firefighters at some point, if you guys did some of that. But communication is actually #1 issue that firefighters face, especially when you're out in the mountains and you don't have any cell service, right? The best way firefighters communicate is with handheld radio.
Okay.
And so you ever played the game telephone when you were a kid in kindergarten, right? So it's like, hey, we need, a water drop here. And we're like, okay. And then
we need to get and it changes, right?
Yeah, we need something. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, and so there's a really critical information gap that is happening because firefighters are not able to communicate real-time information to headquarters or just incident command of where the fire is going and where they need to best allocate the resources. And so what we did is we wanted to come up with a way to help firefighters communicate better. And so we kind of invented, essentially you can call it like a Wi-Fi drone. And so we didn't necessarily invent it. We tried to actually patent it. filed with NASA, and it was granted as a new technology, but it actually didn't receive patentship. But basically, what happened was you have a series of drones. This one collects cell signal, just 4G, 5G, LTE, like that all your phones have, and then it sends the internet from drone to drone, like a daisy chain type of deal. And then each drone sends down Wi-Fi, just like Wi-Fi you'd have at your house. Yeah, it's kind of like a repeater. Yeah, like a repeating kind of a technology. And so beams down the Wi-Fi, and so then firefighters, when they're on the field fighting the fires, they have so much more availability to communicate how they want to communicate. And so whether that's they can do a phone call now and say, hey, fire's changing direction, the wind's coming out of the northeast, we got to go. Like we got to move all of our resources here. They can run. They have like a lot of simulation software they want to do right there. Yeah. And so anyway, so I think, we have some pictures.
Yeah,
So,
here's a look at some of the drones.
Yeah.
A couple of shots of one of them. You can see the Wi-Fi antennas.
Yep. And so
Explain some of that.
This one actually, sorry, I'm kind of a weird angle. I'm going to come over here.
No,
This guy, you see the little silver box with the two black antennas, that would actually pick up the internet signal, the 4G, 5G, LTE. And then this little white guy that's over here, that's kind of the repeater thing that you were talking about. It's called a wireless distribution system client bridge. And so it would send internet from drone to drone. And then on the bottom, there was a separate thing that would make Wi-Fi and then it was beam it to the ground. And so,
interesting.
yeah, it was an amazing.
What was the
project.
up speed and down speed on that?
Oh man, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Geeky stuff.
Yeah.
So amongst that, what was your day-to-day like work with the program? How did you speak into it from your experience in Oroville growing up? And kind of what were some areas you had to step into with faith and risk involved maybe in this process?
Yeah, I think that's definitely where I really needed to trust in God, was in that area. And so I just felt that, so I was there for 2 summers in person. And the first summer we kind of conceptually designed it on computers and paper and kind of like what happens if we would deploy this, how would it work? Kind of like a mission, I guess. And then the second summer we actually built it. So we built it the second summer and then we flew it and tested it, and it was awesome. But that first summer I just felt super underqualified. I was like, man, why am I here? I'm like the youngest guy. Everyone else is literally a rocket scientist, like literally aerospace engineers doing work on rockets, and like they've done drone experience before or with like airplanes and whatever. And I'm like, why am I like I haven't taken any of these classes that these guys have. I'm just a math guy, and I'm like, everyone knows what everything is here out east, and I'm out west, and there wasn't any sidewalks in Virginia, and I was like there's no sidewalks to walk around, and then it was just weird. There's no mountains, and I'm like, oh, that hurts. There's no way to like figure out where you were because there's no mountains and stuff. And I was like, anyway, and so I was like, why am I here? And so I just I really was relying on God a lot. Moved literally across the country, far away from family and friends. I didn't know anyone, didn't have friends, I didn't have a car. And I felt, like I was saying, like, why am I here, God? And I just really needed to, was learning to trust that the Lord had me here for a reason. Yeah. And it wasn't really it was a little bit of a kind of hostile environment for being a believer. One of the first nights we got together, all of us 15 interns, we go out to dinner, and conversation was happening about how Christians were stupid and how they weren't like how Christian like this. Oh, I heard about this one guy who's talking about God, and he was, because a lot of like really smart science people think that Christians aren't, good with science or like are stupid, right? Or like all these things. And I'm like they didn't know that I was a believer, and I'm like, I was like one of the youngest guys there, like I was saying. And so like, they know more than me, they've had more experience than me. And I just was like, okay, I was like, God, like, what are you going to do? Like, this was literally like one of the first couple nights. Yeah. And so, honestly, I was just trying to be kind to them. They ended up choosing me to be the leader of this project. And so
Wow.
God kind of...
So the youngest became the leader.
Yep, I was...
Sounds kind of like Joseph,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was the project leader for this thing, and I had no clue what I was doing. And just kind of inventing things as I was going. And God just, I don't even know, like maybe you could say it elevated me to that position of leadership. And I was just trying to be kind to everyone, and people were causing drama, and I was trying to be God's light and like a healing touch when people were causing drama with each other. And ultimately, there was a couple times where I was able to share my faith, which was cool. And especially a lot that second summer, I felt like I did a lot better job.
You think that happened through your patience on God's process in you? What was that kind of that made it open and available for you to share faith?
I think, we talk a lot, I don't know, well, people talk a lot about like, how do you share your faith well, right? And so kind of what I had found, especially with those people who think they have the whole world figured out and, they're going places and because they're smart and stuff. Like, you have to have that trust and connection of relationship first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so I became friends with them, even though, everyone was getting drunk every weekend. I know one of the whole team leaders was doing drugs while we were there at NASA. And I knew that. I had to be comfortable in those situations where they were throwing parties and getting drunk, and continue just to be friends with them and do fun things. Playing spike ball, going to the beach. And then because I had that friendship relationship, especially that second summer when I went back, I was able to be like, they would say, hey, like, why do you have joy? Why do you seem happy? Or even, what's a good example? I remember I was in a car with one of my guys, and he kind of just was going through a hard time with his girlfriend, and just got to share a little bit about God's love and stuff, and for him. And so kind of God gave me some opportunities to be able to share my faith. But, especially as people who think they have it all figured out, you have to have that kind of depth of relationship first.
Yeah. Yeah. The door isn't open until you've learned to sit down and break bread and get to know them and let them ask you questions.
Absolutely.
Too, right?
Yeah. It was really fulfilling, especially that second summer. I don't know. I think something changed in me too, where I was just a little more confident and open and willing to share my faith that second summer. And I was definitely feeling like I was kind of preaching the gospel and how I was living and how I was trying to be a light. And there was a couple specific instances where I was preaching the gospel, and it was super fulfilling that second summer. Yeah.
Sounds like God drew you and worked through you.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and in Scripture, it tells us to be ready in season in and out. And
have a reason.
Have a reason to share the hope that lies within you with others.
Yeah.
It's called evangelism. And it doesn't mean that we have to go out on the street corner and beat people with what we think they need to know. And
I wasn't doing that.
Turn now, come on, right? It took time. It took 2 years for you to sit there with people and let them wrestle and let them see Jesus in you through your kindness and through your love. God's word said that they will know that we are His disciples by our love. Amen.
Yeah.
And there's also there's a statement out there: no risk, no reward. So you took risks, not knowing what the reward was going to be, right? And you've kind of mapped out a couple of those there. What encouragement or advice would you be willing to share today that you wish you were given when you were younger when it comes to risks? Were you a risk taker when you were young?
I probably was more play it safe. So I have 3 younger brothers, and so it was a party. It was awesome. I loved being one of 4 boys. I was probably more on the safer side compared to like some of my brothers. I think, lots of times, without us knowing, God will bring us into uncomfortable situations.
Absolutely.
I had a lot of those out east. just even that first time, like, God, what am I doing here? Like, I don't deserve to be here. I feel like everyone is smarter than me. They think being a believer is ridiculous and stupid. And I'm like, that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That was really uncomfortable. And I don't know if you've had a situation like that where people are talking bad about, Christians or a believer, right? And that happens, a lot more, and I think especially the young people too.
Yeah.
But sometimes God brings us there, right, to those situations. And I think, maybe God was directing me, and maybe He's still continuing directing me of how can I be light to people who think they have it all figured out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes God brings us to have uncomfortable conversations, right? Like, it's scary to bring up your faith and bring up the hope that you have, right? But I'd rather share it to my boy who's going through a hard time, right? And my buddy Josh, that I was talking about when I was sitting in the car with him, going through a hard time with his girlfriend. Like, I'd rather, like, that's the moment that God who can bring me to in that moment to be able to, share the hope and love of Jesus, right? And so that was an uncomfortable conversation that God was bringing me to.
Yeah.
But I'm still friends with him. He texted me like a week ago, and so
that's great.
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of where God brings us to, even when we don't want to be there.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming and sharing with us today.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
Tucker will be hanging out a little bit afterwards if you guys have some more questions.